Welcome to the Melly
and Shally show
where we unpack the Liqui Moly product range, one product at a time.
So the product specific for today is going to be our copper paste and copper spray, and these are two independent products that use the same materials but way simple to apply.
So one of the things that I've seen so many times, and I don't think all brands around the world have the other option, and that's why we wanted to put the two in one show so that you can make a decision which one you prefer. So I think before we go in how it gets sprayed, what I want to address is where it gets used. So the two products that we're going to focus on, the one a paste. So if I have to take that out and show you what it looks like, you'll see quite a nice color. I don't know if I have my cloth close by, I don't think so, but anyway, there is the copper color. When you look very closely to it, you'll see the small little copper particles. Shally, if you can open for me the copper spray as well. So very important, if you read any copper paste, you will see that it is, or a copper spray, it's going to tell you at the back that it can take 1100 degrees Celsius. Now, if you go to any shop and you compare the different prices of the copper products, pricing is important. If you know what the price of copper is, and you know that there's no way that any copper spray or copper paste will be able to handle 1100 degrees if it doesn't have a sufficient amount of copper in it, you can identify that by the price. If someone tells you it costs R1 but it has an ounce of gold in it, you know that they're not telling the truth. So it's important to look at the pricing, knowing that it is the copper that helps it to be able to handle 1100 degrees. So our copper paste and copper spray have a minimum of 10% copper in it.
So the probability of copper using that, so let's quickly just identify what is the benefits of copper. So copper has a very high thermal heat exchange. With that, like Mel mentioned, it can absorb 1100 degrees Celsius, and you can clearly see that if you use an application and it dissipates or it can't, and it starts seizing up those components. So that's quite a clear identification of the quality of copper being used. As Mel mentioned, our minimum is 10% in our product itself, which is pure copper, and the rest is your carrier oil or the fluid to carry that fluid there. So if I quickly touch on the copper paste specifically, this one here. This is actually tested as a grease type paste. So with that, it has a lubricant inside, and with that lubricant, you'll see generally there's a separation of it because it's like a sponge. If the sponge is saturated, it will give up some lubricant, and that is the yellow fluid you see in there. But it does not mean that the properties of the copper paste is being lost because of the capability or the compatibility where it's used.
Okay, so if I look at the copper paste, normally you get in workshops, whether they use it on brakes or different applications, it's always, like I just did it on this little piece of glass, there's a finger involved because it has to go out and be layered on something. So that's why I quite prefer, and with that spray, you could see, I mean, from here, you might not be able to see that on the screen, but maybe as well on some of the sections that we can add, but it has, I want to see the more I spray, it's just that same color difference that we have with the grease. But if I leave that on, you'll see the amount of copper that's there. I mean, we can see from here very, very clear the traces of copper. I prefer to use the spray, and the reason for that is I use much less. It's much easier to apply when it comes out of the can. It also has a little bit of creeping properties. So when you're going to use it on brakes, when you're going to service your bicycle, your motorbike, wherever you're going to put it on your spark plugs before you're going to put it in so that you avoid it seizing and not being able to get it out afterwards, the copper spray is a very convenient product to use with the same properties as the paste, but not having to get your hands all dirty and last much longer if you're going to use it in a workshop application. So Shally, where would we use copper paste as a general?
Yeah, so copper paste, as Mel mentioned, is the anti-seize compound, and with that, there are a lot of applications where it comes to high thermal heats. So basic example in a workshop will be your exhaust and exhaust manifolds. So when it comes to those studs, a lot of times, we actually had a vehicle yesterday where your whole exhaust is rusted, and if you actually use this as a prevention agent, it's easy to remove those bolts and nuts to disassemble this exhaust. So there are a lot of applications where you can actually use this. When it comes to cycling, I know Richard has different applications he uses it on as well, and every time he asks us different questions, but the spray is also something I prefer over the paste, and Mel mentioned already covered that as well.
Yeah, so you can clearly see the qualities. If you have to test it on your finger as well, you'll be able to see how the properties are about the same. It's just the one a little bit more in a greasy form. But also, I mean, if you want to test, and that's always the thing, we want to make sure that people make an informed decision. And I always say, if you know what properties a specific application needs to have, to be able to read certain properties like the 1100 degrees, being an anti-seizing, having those anti-seizing properties, you have to keep in mind that when it gets to those high temperatures, it has to keep its properties and not lose them. So one of the good tests and what we quite like doing is water normally boils at 100 degrees Celsius. So when we do get a product in the market that we are 100% sure, because we can see according to the price that there is no copper in that product, then what we would do is we'll put a little bit of water, take a little bit of whatever product that brand is that's very, very low cost, and start warming them up. Because the copper paste, if it can take 1100 degrees, is not supposed to boil before the water. Try it and you'll see that the water has more properties in many cases than some of the products that's out there in the market. So a great thing that I like to also test once we, when we do our copper paste, and I'm going to now use this, my finger, seeing that I'm getting into the habit, is to really warm it up, so that you can actually see the high temperature that it can take, but it might change color. But if you touch it when it cools down, it will still have the same properties. So Shally, I see it starting to boil quickly because this is a flaming hot.
So Jenny, what will happen is if you have a competitor brand in this, you'll see that it will start boiling like this, but it will become black, so encrusted. And with that, that leads to additional wear and damages on bearing applications or wherever the application is. Here, what it actually does, the copper compound, it starts absorbing that heat to keep its consistency of that.
Hey.
Guys, that is just a vapor actually catching a light.
So we love burning things and blowing things up in this training area. So I'm not going to put my finger in this right away. So that so I want to quickly cool it down so that I can also put my finger in it and I can show you the density and the product in itself, and how it still has that smoothness and that the properties of a paste. So I'm a little bit wary of where to go and do that. So we wanted to give you a couple of tips so that you can actually just compare the different products. So the test that we have is that with the water. Remember, 1100 degrees mainly comes from the copper that's in the product. And then the application, so many. Once again, look at the technical data sheet, scan the products so that you can see where the different applications are. So if I scream now, it will be because it's still quite warm. Woo!
Let's give you something here.
Okay, so it's a nice test to be able to make. I'm just going to put a little bit on here so that I can show you, but clearly my finger is not, but I mean, I'm still scared to touch it.
Don't touch it.
There's a metal part, but you can still see. It still has
hot.
its properties, so you'll be able to keep on using that, and I'm 100% sure it reached much higher temperatures than 1100 degrees. So Liqui Moly copper paste, easy to use, or the kind of paste that you will know in the tube, but also if you want to have less contamination or less mess on your hands, and for it to last much longer and to be able to apply it a little bit more direct, we have the copper spray as well. So the two products available at all our partners, very easy to use and so many different applications. So the Liqui Moly copper spray and paste. Thank you for watching the Melly
and Shally show.